All right, YouTube, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. It is Wednesday, December 6th. We have a full NBA slate to dive into in today's video. Like we always do, we're gonna go through each and every one of these games. I'm gonna give you my lean on the spread. I'll give you my lean on the total. But as always, my final plays, if you do want to fade my picks, those plays will be in the pinned comment yesterday. Second straight fadeable day here. So we went sweep, sweep, sweep. Positive, right? And now we're sweep for the negative. Tough to see all those red X's. Yesterday, we clearly went a little riskier. We had 3+ money plays. Definitely backed the Suns in the first quarter, and they didn't necessarily come through for us. So tough to see that our last 6 plays, 0-6. But we're here to own it. In our last 26, we're 17-9, right? So the positive is there if you look at the bigger sample size. But man, we went on a hot streak, and now there wasn't even a slowdown. We just went on the brakes to ice cold. But let's go ahead and bounce back tonight. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. We're still hanging in there. It's a marathon, not a sprint. I thought we had some value yesterday. The only value we provided was probably paying a couple salaries at the sports books. But nonetheless, guys, we do have a positive note to talk about. It is the ride of the day coming in from Jonathan. Julius Randle over 4.5 assists. That cashes. He ended with 5 assists. He had a really good game against the Bucks. But the Knicks just couldn't keep that game close. So our same game parlay yesterday, we hit all 3 player props within the parlay, and then we had an alternate line of the Knicks plus 10.5, and they get blown out, right? Like, they couldn't even keep the game that close. But the Bucks are figuring it out, man. They're figuring it out. But nonetheless, Jonathan comes through, cashes the ride of the day. If you guys do want to be the ride of the day, all you got to use is hashtag ride of the day in the comments, and I'm picking one person's play, jumping on board with it, and you guys get a shout out in the next video, win or loss. So go ahead and use that hashtag ride of the day. Let's jump into today's slate. We're starting it off with Cleveland taking on Orlando here. Cleveland on the year 11-9, but they have a losing record at home, which is really interesting. 5-6 at home, going up against Orlando here, one of the best cover teams against the spread this year. 15-5 against the spread. They're having a good year overall. 14-6, and this is just a number that's a little bit too high for me to lay as Cleveland. So I am going to lean towards Orlando plus the 4.5 points. I wouldn't be surprised if Cleveland wins this game by, maybe 2 or 3 points, especially when Cleveland's healthy. I do think that they're one of those underrated teams that people are kind of overlooking. Not that Orlando, isn't underrated, because they are underrated as well, but I do think Cleveland edges this one out. But I like Orlando and the points. So whether Orlando wins it outright or, keeps the game close, I do think that is going to be where my lean lays. Probably my favorite play in this game, though, is going to be leaning towards the over 222.5. Orlando's playing with some, talk about underrated. They're playing with some serious pace. They're top 7 team in terms of pace this season right now. They're shooting the ball well too, which is great to see, because this is such a franchise that's been like, not in limbo, but I guess you could say in limbo for so much time. Like, they're actually playing undeniably good basketball as of late. Like, this is a team that they're not necessarily shocking the world or anything like that, but last year, if you looked at Cleveland versus Orlando, this spread would probably be like 8.5, right? Now here we are, and they've cut that in half, and they're actually anticipated to make it a close game. So give me the over 222.5, as well as Orlando plus the 4.5 points. Next up, we have Detroit taking on Memphis. 2 bad teams, but both their against the spread numbers are a little bit better than their record. So Detroit 2-18 this year, but 9-11 against the spread, which is kind of shocking. Memphis 5-14 this year, but 8-11 against the spread. Memphis has been playing better basketball. They've won 2 of their last 3 games, but I think that stops here. I don't really like them on the road in this spot. I'm going to lean towards Detroit, who it's kind of crazy to even lean towards Detroit, but I do think that they pull this one out. The problem is that they've lost a million games in a row, right? So it's a little crazy. We'll drop the psycho alert alarm to be leaning Detroit in anything, but I guess my only saving grace is that they're playing a team that is arguably just as bad as them, right? In terms of injuries, plenty of probable guys for Memphis here, nothing major to note. The total sitting at 219. I think this is a low scoring game. Obviously the books agree, but I'm going to slightly lean towards the under 219 in this one, but I don't think that makes its way to being a final play, because when you have 2 bad teams, sometimes sometimes things just go kind of haywire, and it's like the lack of defense shows and blah, 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 right? So I'm going to lean towards the under, but I doubt that ends up becoming a final play if I'm being completely honest. All right, Washington is taking on the Sixers here. Important to note that Embiid, Maxey, Oubre, Batum, and Melton are all probable in this game, but they are listed on the injury report. So obviously this would change if Embiid doesn't play or if Maxey doesn't play. But assuming they all play, Sixers should be at full strength going up against a Washington team that really is not all that great. That being said, they did keep a high spread game close last against Orlando. They only lose that game by 5. They covered their 10.5 point spread. They're 10-point dogs here at home today, and I think it may be 2 points lean as Philly. So I think the way that I would, I guess, explain this is that I'm not really backing Washington here, but I don't want to lay the points as Philly here. This Philly team's way better at home than they are on the road this season. So I'm not all that confident that they, blow out Washington here. The total sitting at 239. I don't hate this game for some same game parlay action, so we might try to find some value in there. But yeah, this is probably most likely a pass on the spread type of a game to me. I don't mind the over because I think that these two teams, Philly could score a lot of points. Washington has terrible defense. Philly's been playing with some serious pace. Obviously, Washington has as well with their defense. So I don't hate the over here, but that 10-point spread is a little worrisome to me, laying that as Philly on the road. So again, it doesn't push me all the way to the edge of being like, hey, let's go Washington plus 10. No. But I think it just keeps me off the spread enough. So yeah, I guess by default, I'm fading the minus 10. Maybe you could say I'm leaning Washington, but hopefully I'm making it clear that I'm not really leaning Washington. I'm just leaning away from Philly minus the 10 points. But my favorite opportunity in this game is probably looking at some same game parlay potential. A lot of holes in that Washington defense, as we know, so we can get some Philly guys in there for some alternate lines and hopefully cash something there. But speaking of same game parlay potential, this is probably the one that I have my sights set on here. Atlanta taking on Brooklyn right now. Atlanta -4 here at home. Total sitting at 242. Atlanta has a losing record at home. 3-5 this season. They're 9-5 overall. 5-14 against the spread. Brooklyn, like I told you last week, Brooklyn still not getting the flowers they deserve here. 10-9 straight up. That's meh, right? But they're 14-4-1 against the spread this season. They played they played Atlanta already, right, earlier in the year, just about a week and a half ago. Took them to OT, only lost by 2, meaning they would have covered this number. In fact, they did cover the number there. Like, this is a team that I think is just kind of an unsung against the spread team this season, and we're riding with it again today. I've seen this at -3.5 on some sportsbooks, so if you can get it at 4, I think there's opportunity there. The only thing that would worry me is that if Atlanta's offense fully clicks, there's very few teams in the league that can keep up with them, right? That being said, we saw Brooklyn do it and Atlanta's offense clicked. We even saw San Antonio's offense keep up with them. The point being, Atlanta's defense is terrible. So if you're going to give me a capable Brooklyn team +4 points, I'll take that all day long here. Jalen Johnson still out for Atlanta as well. In terms of the total, 242, I don't have much there. I could see this getting up into the 240s, but I don't really trust it all entirely. If I'm doing anything in this game, it's going to be Brooklyn +4, or looking at some same game parlay potential in this game, or both, obviously. So keep an eye on the pinned comment for that, but I really do like this spot for some same game. Both these last 2 games we talked about, some same game parlay potential. All right, guys, before we continue on with the slate, let me talk to you about Outlier. I've talked to you about them before, but you can get 7 days free right now with the link in the pinned comment. It is my favorite data sports betting research tool out there, especially for player props. We're on the player prop screen right now. You can literally go through every player prop available, look at their hit rates over their last 5, last 10, last 20 against their opponent this year, last year. And if you want to do some more deep diving, you can dive in, click in, and see all of the other insights that this tool provides. It is really cool. You can look at all of their lines, and what's great about this tool is that you literally can say, okay, you know what, DraftKings, I like it, let me do this, continue to browser. It's going to open up DraftKings on your computer, and you'll literally be able to place that bet. It goes right into your bet slip. You don't have to dig around for it, right? So guys, make sure to go ahead and check out Outlier. Use the link in the pinned comment. You get 7 days free. After that, it's still not a backbreaker, right? It's not going to break the bank. It's $20, $19.99 actually per month after that. So I do think it's a tool that is well worth it. So go ahead and check out Outlier, guys. Again, that link is in the pinned comment. You get 7 days free. Let's go ahead and get back to this slate. Minnesota taking on San Antonio here. This should end like we all expect it to end. Minnesota is definitely one of the better defensive teams in the entire league. They have a good winning record, right? They're playing at home. There's a reason why they're 12-point favorites. So they should beat San Antonio by 12. That being said, I don't necessarily know if I love the spot. San Antonio's covered their numbers in terms of against the spread in 3 of their last 5 games here. They're definitely covering those big numbers, so this should be a Minnesota minus 12 spot, which is where I ultimately end up leaning, but I don't think it makes its way into the final plays because this San Antonio team, as bad as they've been, as shaky as they've been, it's still a Minnesota team that is questionable. Anthony Edwards is questionable to play. I think that's a huge offensive hit to them, and this San Antonio team plays so fast and shoot so much. Call it quantity over quality, right? But like, this is a team that's going to throw a bunch at the wall and see if it sticks. Sometimes it may stick, so they can keep games close. Do they win this game? No, I think Minnesota's defense ultimately prevails, but yeah, I'm kind of worrisome, just like I was with that big number with Philly, like worrisome about Minnesota minus 12, but I do think that, you know, the Spurs don't match up at all well against this Minnesota team, so they should be able to beat them handily. What was it, the last time they played, they only won by 10 or maybe 8 points. I forget what it was, but we've seen these two teams keep it close already. But again, Minnesota is going to be my lean in this spot. In terms of a total, we're looking at 227. I think Minnesota drops 220 in this game just because San Antonio's defense is so poor. So I guess by default, I am going to take a peek at the over here. Minnesota right now averaging 113 per game, which is pretty much just a little under league average, but going up against the Spurs, just like they did last time, they scored 117. I expect them to score 120. Definitely if Anthony Edwards plays. If he doesn't, little shaky, but yeah, give me the over ever so slightly in this spot. Next up, we have Toronto taking on Miami. This should be a real grinded out type game. We do have a low total, and I still like the under in this spot here. But in terms of a spread here, Toronto minus 3.5 is going to be my lean. I just haven't seen the consistency I'd like to see out of Miami, right? They've lost 4 of their last 5 games. They've not covered in 3 of their last 4, whereas this is a Toronto team that's kind of doing the same thing, but a better against the spread team this year. And they're at home here, and I think they match up well. So I am going to lean towards Toronto in this spot. Bam Adebayo is out. Highsmith is out, right? Tyler Hero's still out. Like, this is a pretty bumped and bruised Miami team as well to make note of. So give me Toronto here minus the 3.5, and I already gave my lean on the total there. All right, Chicago taking on Charlotte. 2 of the not so great teams in the league this season here. Obviously, Charlotte's still out with LaMelo Ball. He is out. Zach LaVine out for Chicago. I think that I'm going to take the points here. This is like a garbage game. If you have a strong stance on this game, man, you're an absolute psycho. Let me know in the comments if you guys do have a strong stance on this game. But I'll lean towards Charlotte because I think that their offense has looked okay as of late. They dropped 129 against Brooklyn. Then against a really good Minnesota defense, they scored 117. So yeah, I'm going to lean towards them. Do I love it? No. Does it make its way into the final plays? Most likely not. In terms of the total 220, I don't think either one of these defenses really has what it takes to suppress the other, even though Chicago has been playing fairly slow this year. They're the 30th ranked team last 10 games in pace. I think Charlotte may make up for that with both teams, I guess, a lack of defense. So I'm going to lean towards the over, but both of those leans are kind of like, yikes, like we're pulling teeth here, right? So don't expect either of those to be in the final plays. I'm just being fully transparent with you guys. All right, guys, that holiday deadline is approaching for the Fade Me store. Again, it's 12/10 is sort of that line that I'm saying, hey, if you place your orders before that, you'll most likely, no guarantees, get your orders in before Christmas. But the sooner, the better. We have tons of new stuff. You can see our holiday collection out there right now. We got a couple of the ugly sweaters, but tons of cool stuff over on the store right now, guys. And we have a couple new premium styles as well that are a little bit more expensive, but are well worth it. Let's see if I can show you you guys one real quick here. This is one of my favorite things that we've produced yet. This is so damn comfortable. Higher price point, $60, which obviously we like to keep the costs low on the store, but nonetheless, this is obviously cheap for like a standard sweatshirt nowadays, but comes in a couple different colors here, and it is super comfortable and fits really well. So guys, go check out fademe.store, support the movement, support what we're doing over here, and again, get those orders in if you do want them in by Christmas. We have such an increase in traffic and sales and everything, and work in the warehouse really hard, so thank you guys for that, but I do want to be realistic about timelines and whatnot, so orders getting in sooner rather than later, definitely for the better here. Let's go ahead and get back to the slate again. That's fademe.store. We're looking at Houston taking on OKC here. OKC, I would say, is clearly the better team, but Houston's been kind of impressing the hell out of me in many situations as of late. That said, they just kind of ran through a gauntlet of Dallas, Denver, and the Lakers, in which they got beat in those games. The only game they even covered in was the game against Denver, and they covered by a half point, so really on the hook there. Whereas this is a good OKC team. I really do believe that, so I'm going to lean towards OKC minus the 2.5 points, but like I tell you guys, it's important to read the lines, right? I'm smelling a little bit of a trap here. Like OKC to me should be heavier favorites. They're 4.5 point favorites against the Lakers. They were 5.5 point favorites against Dallas. Now they're playing Houston and they're only 2.5 point favorites. Maybe there's some sort of trap potential here, but sometimes you just got to trust the gut. And this big old gut is saying this OKC team is better than Houston all around. So that is the direction we're leaning in, but don't say I didn't tell you. If you ride this and it blows up in our faces, it's most likely because it was a trap from the get, right? In terms of the total, we're looking at 227 right here. I see this being like an OKC 120 to Houston 1 maybe 15 type game, so we'll lean towards the over pretty confidently here. This is an OKC team that really has no trouble scoring the ball. Obviously, in terms of pace, they're top 12 team. In terms of where Houston ranks, yes, they're a little bit slower, but they've been a fairly efficient team thus far as well. Second in the league, middle of the pack in the league in terms of field goal percentage, but second in the league in the second half here. So this is a team that, can kind of put pieces together as the game goes on. So I'll lean towards the over here. Dallas, big time favorites over Utah here as they're favored by 9 points. I like this spot. We've already seen this line jump to 10 on some sports books here. Yet to play this season, but this is a Dallas, team that has owned Utah. They've won 7 of their last 10, dating back to last year here. And this is just a Dallas team that I think that offense, when firing on all cylinders, like they're kind of, this sounds crazy, but they're kind of the best of the best in the league when they're firing on all cylinders. They need to fire on all cylinders though. When Kyrie Irving and Luka are kind of feeling it, like that's a tough team to beat. Kyrie is questionable here. I think he missed last game with just foot soreness. I feel like he might play in this game, but Kelly Olynyk, Jordan Clarkson, and Lauri Markkanen all out for Utah. So I think this is a Dallas game all day long here. Total sitting at 227.5. Utah doesn't play much defense. They try and play really quick, but I've told you guys all year long, right? They play really fast. 5th in field goal attempts, 28th in field goal percentage. So it certainly is a team that plays fast, but they're not the most efficient team. But I think Dallas kind of carries the scoring load here, puts up 120 or so. So I like the over in this spot, but definitely worth considering Dallas's team total as well. All right, next up, and we'll get right out of it. I'm dropping the psycho alert alarm here. 12.5 points. I know it says 12 on the graphics. It's 12.5 right now as a spread here. And I think that's just too much for Golden State to lay against Portland. Listen to these past 3 numbers that they've had when they have a spread this big. 12.5 against Milwaukee. They lose by 6. 11.5 against Indiana. They win the game outright. 11.5 against Cleveland. They win the game outright. Like, this is scarily a Portland team that, when given a 12.5 point spread, they've covered that in 5 straight games. And Golden State has not done that, has not beat a team by 12.5 or more in 10 straight games. So yes, they're the better team. Yes, I expect them to win, but I can't confidently lay 12.5 points. So weirdly, I'm leaning towards Portland. That's so funny because we've leaned Detroit, Portland, what are we, Charlotte? What is this NBA season? But we are leaning Portland here, minus the or plus the 12 points. In terms of the total, 225 and a half. I kind of like the under in this spot. I think if Portland keeps this game close, it's gonna be like a 108 to 106 or 110 to 106 type of a game there. And guys, if you're still watching right now, go ahead and comment 19. You made it 19 minutes into the video. You're an absolute psycho, but I freaking love you for it. you part of the fade squad, you ain't no guppy. Go ahead and comment 19. Let's get on to the last game of today's slate. The Clippers taking on the Nuggets here. Denver actually underdogs here on the road. I'm not entirely sure why, because even with Jamal Murray questionable and Aaron Gordon probable, I still think they're a way better team. So I'm going to lean Denver. But again, this is kind of just like we talked about a couple games back. Like, you smell that? Kind of smells like a trap. Like, why is Denver only sitting at 1-point dogs? They've already played the Clippers a couple times this season and have beat them both times, 111 to 108 in mid-November, and then late November, which is about a week ago, in a week and a half or so, they won 113 to 104. So something smells a little fishy here, but it's still one of the better teams in the league going up against what I would call the Clippers right now, a mediocre team. So give me Denver here plus the 1 point, maybe on the money line if you want some additional value there too. These are two teams that don't necessarily play with the fastest of pace, and that total sitting at 226. So I'm going to lean towards the under here as well, but I really think that it finishes right around the 224 to 226 number. So it's not the most confident under lean, but I don't necessarily see this being like a 235 type game. I see it being mid 220. So for that reason, I'd probably stick away from it, which, you know, a lot of these totals are pretty sharp today, so we might not have that many totals in the pin comment. But that is going to wrap it up for today's video, guys. If you did enjoy, make sure you're hitting that like button and hitting that damn subscribe button. We're positive on the year. We're making money. We're profitable. We went through a crazy 17-3 stretch, which helps us going 0-6 in our last 2 nights, because now we're 17-9, still well profitable, right? So that is the good news. The bad news is we got to get this train back on tracks, on the tracks. 0-6 in our last 3 nights. We're here to own it. I tell you guys all the time, I'll lose my last 1,000,000 bets and still show up and record a video, but we definitely have to get the train back on the track. So let's go ahead and do that tonight. Keep an eye on the pin comment for all of those final plays, and I'll catch you guys in the next one, all right? Peace out.